Reading through the Bible in 1 year. January 18th, Genesis 22 through 23, Nehemiah 7:5 through 31, Matthew 14:34 through 15:20, and Acts 14. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham! He said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son, Isaac, not Ishmael, right? We're talking the one that I gave you, the child of promise. Take that one, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. And they both went on. Both of them together. I can't words. So they went, both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. He said, Here I am, my son. He said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went, both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham! He said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, saying that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of the place, The Lord Will Provide, as it is to this day. On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Now, quick note here before we go any further. He knew, because God had first off given him a son, right? This is when we see the faith of Abraham really revealed. He knows that God is able to make his barren wife able to produce a child and keep him alive to raise this child, both he and his wife, given how old they are, right? They're over 100 at this point. So they know this, and he knows this information. And God said, through Isaac, your son, you will have a multitude of nations come from you. That can only happen if he's alive. So this is the rational faith that we're talking about to begin with. A rational faith that says God has proven himself time and again in everything that he said he's going to do. And he said that it's through Isaac that he's going to have all of these generations. Therefore, either God is going to stop me and provide something to be sacrificed and said, or if I do follow through and kill my child, it'll be traumatic for him. However, God will raise him up. That's all I need to know. So if this is what God asks of me, then I'll do it. Okay, let's continue on. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. Because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and will multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gates of his enemies. And in your offspring shall the nations of the earth be blessed, because you obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now, after these things, it was told to Abraham, Behold, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz, his firstborn, Buz, his brother, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel, father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Teba, Gahem, Tahash, and Maacah. Sarah lived 127 years. So she had about 37 years with her, 36, 37 years with Isaac. These are the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is at Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before the dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The Hittites answered Abraham, Hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham arose, bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns, is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. Now Ephron, who was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites and all who were in the gate of the city, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of all the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land. And he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, But if you will, hear me. I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, My lord, listen to me. A piece of land with 400 shekels of silver. What is it between you and me? Bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron. And Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron and Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of the city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that were in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. Now, the reason why he did this was so that as it goes forward in time, they can't come back and say, we've given you this thing, so now you owe us anything. No. Anything that he has, he purchased himself, or God has given to him. That's the point. Let's go to Nehemiah. Wow, this is a short one. Oh, that's why it's a short one. It's a list of names. Yay. Okay. Again, the reason why there are so many names are because this establishes it as a proof in history. This is a real thing that happened with real people who existed. And as we learn more and more about our history and through archaeology, we can find these people referenced and these names. We may not find all of them, but we find enough of them to find it and prove that these things happened at certain times. Then my God put it into my heart to assemble the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogy. And I found the book of genealogy of those who came up at the first. And I found written in it, these are the people of the province who came up out of the captivity of those exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried into exile. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own. And they came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Rehemiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, same Mordecai from before, Bilshan, Mispereth, Bigvai, Nahum, Baanah. The number of the men of the people of Israel, the sons of Parosh, 2,172. The sons of Shephatiah, 372. The sons of Erah, 652. The sons of Pahath Moab, namely the sons of Jeshua and Moab, 2,118. The sons of Elam, 1,254. The sons of Zatu, not Baku, That's a Star Wars thing. This is Zatu. 845, the sons of Zakkai, 760. The sons of Benui, 648. The sons of Bebai, 628. The sons of Azgad, 2,322. The sons of Adonikam, 667. The sons of Bigvai, 2,067. The sons of Adin, 655. The sons of Ater, namely of Hezekiah, 98. The sons of Hashum, 328. The son of Bezai, 324. The sons of Harif, 112. The sons of Gibeon, 95. The men of Bethlehem and of Netopha, 188. The men of Anathoth, 128. The men of Beth Azmaveth. It's hard when it goes around the corner there. 42. The men of Kiriath Jearim, Kephira, and Beeroth, 743. The men of Ramah and Geba, 621. The men of Michmash, 122. And tomorrow, we read through a bunch more names. Let's go to Matthew. And when they had crossed over, meaning that they had crossed over, where is it? The Sea of Galilee. Anyway, when they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent it all around that region and brought to him all who were sick and implored them that they might only touch the fringe of his garment, and as many as touched it were made well. This is how much faith they had that he could heal them at this point. Then the Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, "Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat." And he answered them, "Why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of tradition? For God commanded, honor your father and mother, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if anyone tells his father or his mother, what you have gained from me is given to God, he does not need to honor his father. So for the sake of your tradition, you have made void the word of God. You hypocrites. Well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Bit of a background on this. Let's go to Exodus 20. That's right, 10 commandments. And we're going to come down here to this line right here. Right? Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. That's what it refers to. And the whole point of this, and it's pretty simple, is that as your parents get older, it is your responsibility to take care of them, right? And then later on, as you get older, your children will take care of you. They'll bring you into their home. They'll take care of your needs. They'll take care of everything else until you die. In the same way, you should do the same, right? But what's happening here? The Pharisees, somewhat the same way as the Catholic Church did with indulgences. They wanted some extra coin. Bling, bling. So what they did is they made a commandment. Again, relaxing the laws of God, saying, you know what? We can do this for you, right? Same with the government, now takes care of our elderly, and takes care of, because they take our taxes, which they exact from our hand at, threat of jail, right? They take this money from us, and then they use it to cover things like Medicare, Medicaid, all of those things. Social Security, what have you. And what happens with this is that the temple was saying the same thing. Tell your parents, whatever you would have gained from living with me, right? All the money that I would normally say, I'm doing a better thing and I'm giving it to God. It makes me a holier person. It makes me a greater Jew because I am serving God more deeply with my pocketbook. And I'm going to give them the money that I would normally have set aside to take care of you in your old age, right? So I'm really blessing God through this. Yeah, great for them. We read already how that happened with the what was it? It was in Acts, um, the church and the temple and their daily distribution. They weren't giving the food to the people who were mixed blood of both Greeks and Jews, because, they're not really Jews. The same kind of thing here. So what they did is they twisted God's word that says clearly, as we just saw, take care of your parents. Right? Why? It's the only one with a promise that it may go well with you. You take care of your parents and they'll take care of you. And this is a pattern to pick up on as things go down the road. This is what you need to do. So they knew this, but they did nothing about it. Well, worse than that. They knew this, and then they twisted it so that people didn't have to give money to take care of their parents. They're pushing off that responsibility onto the temple to have the temple do it for them. That's why he calls them hypocrites. Because they're getting picky and they're saying, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands when they eat. Really? That's your concern? There's a direct commandment from God to take care of your family. But you've thrown that out so you can have more money in the church. All right? Let's continue on. So he's now referring to the whole, they do not wash their hands when they eat. So I said, okay, first off, you guys are hypocrites because of this, right? Then he digs into them some more. And he called the people to him, and he said to them, hear and understand, it is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person. Right? Then the disciples came and said to him, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? He said, good. Well, not directly, but it's what's implied. He answered, every plant that my Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They're blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. Peter said to him, well, explain the parable to us. He said, it's not that hard. Are you still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? All right? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. See how that works? For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone. See, their fear was that if your hands are not washed properly, and they had a whole process for this, if your hands were not washed properly, then there was a chance that you could take in something that was unclean, and therefore you would become unclean, right? But what's Jesus saying here? He's saying, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. The condition of the heart is revealed through the actions and words of the person, right? What is it Jesus said? They will know us by our fruit. They're going to know us by how we treat each other. First, how we treat the church, and second, how we treat the rest of the world, right? That's what reveals who we are as Christians. Heck, that's what reveals who we are as people, right? If you want to trust somebody, just trust some random person off the street, that's fine. You can do that. But when they change their views with you, when they change their words, when they change what they're doing, when you see how they trick other people to believing them on certain things, then you know the heart of the person, right? Same thing here. It's not what you eat that defiles you. And there's, I think it's in Mark, where this is mentioned. And it said, probably one of my favorite lines, simply because I'm a Gentile and I love me some bacon. That because of this, that this is where he declared all things, all foods, clean. Because again, it's not what you eat that that makes you clean or unclean. Now, the Jews had absolutely certain things that they could eat and couldn't eat. And the reason why they had that, God thought was pretty clear to them, but they made it into a rule. They made it into they expanded it far beyond what it was intended to be. It was intended to make them holy. Again, holy meaning separate, right? To make them different from the rest of the world. And whereas you had, tons of other people who were eating pork and bacon and all these other things, right? They were eating all of these things, but God had called them unclean, basically saying, you're not allowed to eat those things. Made them different. So while everyone else is having bacon cheeseburgers, they're like, no, thank you. Just the burger, please, because they can't have dairy with meat as well. Right? So they would either have just the burger or just the cheese, not together, and certainly not with bacon. Why? Because it made them peculiar. It made them different. And it showed people that these people cared about what God had to say and that they were doing what he said, even in the face of denying bacon. It's kind of terrible. But again, that's what God had them do. So I'm not saying God did something wrong. What I'm saying is that I'm glad I'm a Gentile and that he allows me to eat bacon. All right, continuing on. Let's go to Acts 14. Now, at Iconium, they entered into together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. Now, again, remember, this is after they had been in Pisidia and Antioch, right? And they had a great number of people who believed, and then the Jews got angry because there were so many people who were believing, so they immediately started attacking them and going directly after them, right? So they left. Now, at Iconium, they entered together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So they remained for a long time speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. I like that. They poisoned the minds against the brothers, so because of that, they stayed longer. Like, okay, obviously there's something here to be done. So until God closes the door here, we're going to stick around. We're going to continue working for Christ. I lost my spot. But the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. When an attempt was made by both Gentiles and Jews with the rulers to mistreat them and to stone them, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. Now at Lystra, there's a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and had never walked. So everybody knew this guy. And he listened to Paul speaking. And Paul, looking intently at him, and seeing he had faith to be made well, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." And he sprang up, began walking. And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lycaonian, "The gods have come to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. But when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of it, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, saying, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you. We bring you good news that you should turn from these vain things," this, idol worship, "to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. And past generations he allowed all nations to walk in their own ways. Yet he did not leave himself without witness. For he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness." Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the people from offering sacrifice to them. But Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, places where they had been before, and having persuaded the crowds, they stoned Paul to death, drug his body out of the city. Kind of a weird, fickle turn there, isn't it? They saw everything that he had done, that he had healed somebody who was born lame, wanted to offer sacrifice to them. And then suddenly they're like, "Oh, we should kill these guys." Kind of weird. I'm not saying it's weird like, oh, it didn't happen. It's kind of weird given the way that these people would turn. But when the disciples had gathered around him, he rose up and entered the city. So God raised him up. And on the next day, he went on with Barnabas to Derbe. And when they had preached the gospel to that city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and to Antioch. Really, we're this close to the end, and I just can't words. And to Iconium and to Antioch, strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in their faith, and saying that through many tribulations, in some cases even stoning, we must enter the kingdom of God. And when they had appointed the elders for them in every church with prayer and fasting, they committed them to the Lord, in whom they had believed. And they passed through Pisidia and came to Pamphylia. When they had spoken the word in Perga, they went down to Italia, and from there sailed to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work that they had fulfilled. And when they arrived and gathered the church together, they declared all that God had done with them, and how he opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. And they remained no little time with the disciples. Behold, the word of the Lord.